In the history of our country, there was only one president who was inaugurated not once, not twice, but 4 times. That was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was inaugurated in 1933, in 1937, in 1941, and in 1945. On each of these 4 occasions, President Roosevelt took his oath of office, placing his hand on the Bible he had opened to a particular passage from the first letter to the Corinthians, which we have heard today. President Roosevelt was not a particularly religious man. Very few of our presidents have been. But obviously, this passage of Scripture spoke to his heart. If I speak in human and angelic tongues, but do not have love, I am just a clashing cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I understand all the mysteries of heaven and earth, and have all the knowledge possible to fit into one head, but do not have love, it serves me nothing. If I have faith great enough to move all the mountains in the world, but no love, I am nothing. If I give away everything I own, but have no love, I gain nothing. Love is all that matters. Love is all there is. 5 centuries ago, there was a pope by the name of Julius II, who was not exactly regarded as a paragon of virtue. He was a good administrator and a patron of the arts, but he was known as the fearsome pope, the warrior pope. As pope, he would put on a complete suit of armor and a helmet, take up a sword and a spear, jump on his war horse, and lead his armies to slaughter his enemies and conquer cities. He hated his recent predecessor, Alexander VI, who had been no gem himself, and under pain of excommunication, Julius forbade anyone from ever mentioning Alexander's name. A wonderful Christian. After Julius's death in 1513, one of the greatest authors of the day, Erasmus, wrote a satirical pamphlet called Julius Excluded from Heaven. Instantly it became extremely popular and is still hilariously funny to this day. In it, the dead Pope Julius arrives at the gates of heaven in his full armor, with his weapons and his retinue of soldiers. With his key, he tries to open the gate of heaven, and it doesn't work. It is the key he has been using his whole life, the key of power. But that key would not open the gate of heaven. So Julius bangs on the gates, and finally old St. Peter comes and demands, "Who is this fully armed and trying to get into heaven?" Julius says, "Don't you know who I am?" He takes off his helmet and puts on his papal crown. Peter says, "I certainly don't recognize that as anything to do with Christ. That cloak of yours does not impress me either, studded with gold and jewels. It is worthless here. And that key is very different from the keys that were handed to me so long ago by Christ." Julius threatens, "You open these gates for me, or I will call my armies and knock the gates down." Peter just laughs. Says Julius, "If you don't open these gates, I will excommunicate you." St. Peter laughs again, and Julius says, "Don't you realize that when I was Pope on earth, I used to terrorize even the kings and princes by hurling my thunderbolts of excommunication, and I have a papal bull prepared just for you." Peter looks at him incredulously and says, "Thunderbolts? Terrorizing? Bulls? Excommunication? I never heard Christ utter these words. Let me ask you, why was it that when you were in charge of God's church, You did not accept and embrace all of God's children. Julius replies, I would have accepted anybody as long as they recognized my power and filled my coffers with money. Peter tells him, that key in your hand will open nothing up here. I suggest, Julius, that you go off and start a different paradise of your own. For through these gates can enter only those who clothe the naked, who feed the hungry, who give drink to the thirsty, who care for the sick, the poor, and the little ones. At the end of our life, like Pope Julius, we too will stand at the gates of paradise. We might well say, I have spoken in human and angelic tongues. I have mastered 7 languages on earth. St. Peter will say, yes, but did you love? We might say, I had the gift of prophecy. I was a wonderful preacher in the church. I did so much for God. St. Peter will say, I don't care. Did you love? We might say, I read so many books, and I understood all the mysteries of heaven and earth. I have mastered all the knowledge that could possibly fit into a human mind. St. Peter will look at us and say, yes, but did you love? We might say, I had so great a faith that my faith could have moved the Rocky Mountains, the Andes, and the Himalayas all at the same time. No one ever had as much faith as I did. St. Peter will shake his head and say, but did you love? We might say, I was a priest serving your church for many decades. St. Peter will merely say, but did you love? I might say, I was a bishop, I was a pope, I put that big hat on my head, I wore so many jewels and the finest robes. St. Peter will look at us and say, but did you love? Perhaps I will say, I raised difficult children, even put them through college. But did you love? I took up the collection at church and made the people put in more than that $1 bill. But did you love? I might say, I wrote books. I composed music. I sang in the choir. I played instruments to God's glory. St. Peter will look at us and say, but did you love? At the end, it matters not that we were elected President of the United States 4 times over and led our country to victory in the most terrible war of all time. It matters not the position that we have, the clothes we wore, the things we did, the knowledge we had. There is only one question that will be asked of us in the end. Did you love?